Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain. And as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenden. Folks, what we're seeing occur right now in Cleveland, Ohio, is something that we just cannot ignore. It's something that's getting worse and worse by the minute. And what it is that the gutless opposition party is taking this opportunity to flaunt the fact that they do not believe in laws. We see that they break every rule. We see that the secretary of the party, Rensis and Repeatus, is hiding behind curtains so that he doesn't have to uphold his duty and obligation to have a truly open roll call, which is required by the meetings. That's what, and the rules, and that's what allows this to go forth and to be challenged, as it rightfully should be. No, he's trying to shirk his duty. He is playing dirty, underhanded, mafia-like tactics with Donald Trump at his side. He's playing the mafioso-quafioso's game at the great expense of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And it is sickening. It's sickening to see that this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours has been pushed to such a diabolical position that it has been here. And it is all thanks to the bizarre ascendancy of the Pied Piper for disillusioned conservatives. But it goes deeper than that, folks. It literally goes deeper than that. And the reason that I can say that with the amount of confidence I do and the self-assuredness that I do as I sit here and speak into this microphone is because we know that Donald J. Trump has never really once in his life been a conservative. For his 70 years spent on this earth, he has never once espoused to the practical conservative positions. And in fact, it's as we've harped about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that Donald Trump is not a conservative, has never once been a conservative, and he never once read through the Constitution. And the reason he didn't read through the Constitution is because he said that there is no intrinsic value in it, that he saw no need to do so, that he didn't find any value in it whatsoever. And that is coming to the forefront here. It's coming to the forefront because what he's trying to do is say, look, rules don't matter. What was the first thing that we warned about with respect to Donald Trump, going back to our earliest days in taking you over the friendly airwaves? We warned that he would try and carve out a niche for himself, to say that the laws and rules don't apply to him, to say that he is somehow above the fray, and that's what we're seeing unfurl in Cleveland. And it's not just with Donald Trump. We see that the Republican Party has been flaunting this kind of nonsense in election cycle after election cycle. Clearly, the Republican Party is no longer a political platform of ideas. It's no longer about ideology. It's about standing against someone, and that's it. But what has that gotten us in the last several successive election cycles? It's gotten us, defeat after defeat. And it's going to have the same result here. When we are no longer a nation of laws, but become a nation of men, that is when we see this type of rank and rancid corruption run just the gamut here. And that's what it's doing. It's running the gamut. It is making a mockery of our entire electoral process, just as we said it would, just as we said that it would always do, because it's not about the rule of law. It's about power, greed, and corruption. And Trump is greedy. He is corrupt. And it's about his power at the expense of we the people, because they were using Gestapo-like tactics on the floor, using armed guards to push delegates off of the floor and then replacing them with Trump-friendly alternates when they hadn't even broken any rules. Jeremy, this is unlike anything we've seen in living memory. It literally is unlike anything we've ever seen in living memory.
Well, again, it's all about power and control with him. That's all it's ever been. And here's the thing. We've mentioned this numerous times, that Trump has no intentions of winning. And if there is ever a doubt about that, that doubt has been laid to rest tonight. Because what he has successfully done is given all the ammunition to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party and the Fabians, of which he is a card-carrying member of, in order for them to say, we're just going to take this by a landslide. Because all Hillary Clinton has to do now, if Trump is actually allowed to be the nominee, if he's set to be the nominee for the gutless opposition party, all Hillary has to say is one thing, and she'll never have to say another thing for the rest of the general election during the debates. And she'll look at him and she'll say, you can't even maintain control within your own party, and you have divided it more than it ever has been. What in the hell makes you think you can lead this country and prevent it from becoming divided more than what it is now?
And that's the thing. We're already seeing delegates, and not just delegates, but people that have been watching this, that have been heavily involved, say this. In fact, Trump even had one of his own top donors sit there and say, you can't do this in America. And the problem I have with him saying that is not that he's wrong in saying it. He's absolutely right. Why did it take him this long to see it? Why did it take him to the point to where it was on the convention floor there in Cleveland, Ohio? This has been going on throughout the entire primary process. Why was he not there saying that Trump was using these type of sleazy tactics with the Cruz camp and with Cruz followers, all the death threats? Hell, we've even gotten the death threats here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. This is not something that can be so easily ignored. Now, yes, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are going to try and paint this to fit their twisted, propagandistic, Fabian socialist agenda. In fact, it's already trending on Facebook as hashtag Never Trump delegates opposed to Trump nomination fail to force a vote on convention rules. It's not that they failed to force the vote.
They were prohibited from doing it.
They were prohibited from doing so because of the gutless opposition party, the detente wing of it, with Rinse and Repeatus hiding behind a curtain so that he would not have to accept the signatures to allow that to go through the legal process. Look, it was already thought that this movement was going to lose, even if they got the roll call vote. But the voice vote was too lopsided. And I hate to say this, Jeremy, but if we think back to 2012 with the Ron Politardians that were running around, and they said that their voice was rejected and that the voice vote was really rigged.
They were
I don't
right.
doubt it now. I don't doubt
they
it.
were right. And here's the thing: we have all these individuals, these Trumpledites, these diehard people who would take a bullet for Trump. In fact, they would take a bullet from him pulling the trigger of the gun and still vote for him. He even said so as much. They've even admitted it. We have individuals here on social media. I'm looking at a post on Facebook from a mutual acquaintance of ours. It says, well, the Never Trump lost again today at the Republican National Convention. Goes on to say they lost in the Rules Committee. They have lost in federal court. When are they going to understand that they are attempting to overturn the will of the majority of Republican voters? I'm sorry, but no, it's not the will of the majority of Republican voters. It's just not. These people have no idea. They think it's all about, they think that the Never Trump movement is in response to people being upset about Cruz being forced out and suspending his campaign. That's not what it's about. This is about keeping a Fabian out of office.
Yeah, I mean, it really does have nothing to do with the cult of personality that's involved with it. And the whole reason that doesn't matter is because it's about the law. This is about rule of law. And then that whole statement there about where they're trying to say that it wasn't done in federal court. I'm sorry, but the state of Virginia's case was heard, and the judge had determined in that court, a federal court, that no, the Virginia delegates do not have to be bound. There is your precedence. There is precedence. And so what that little person was saying there is a bald-faced lie. And of course, that's par for the course with these Lion Branch Trump videos, because they just go out of their way to lie.
Now, here's the thing. Because it was a federal court ruling and not a Supreme Court ruling, it was a federal court ruling. That federal court has powers of contempt, meaning
yes, it does.
that because Rinse and Repeatus wanted to pull these little shenanigans, guess what, folks? The lawsuits are going to fly. He could be held in contempt of court.
Oh, yes, he
by
could.
not allowing this.
And it could also be expedited, which it's going to have to be.
Yes.
Because the convention's only 3 days. And, you know, it's important to keep in mind here, what is a convention for? A convention was originally for setting the rules and picking the nominee. Now, historically speaking, it went back to, in the earliest part of the 19th century, being a congressional caucus that decided who the party nominee was. So there would be no open primaries. And you see, that's actually what Rinse and Repeatus was trying to prevent here. This was Ken Cuccinelli trying to bring forth some of the rule changes that even pro-Trump delegates supported, such as closing primaries and giving more control back to the state levels of the party. And that is what Rinse and Repeatus didn't want. He wanted to keep the stranglehold of this centralized movement. Now, you recall that on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, we have discussed how populism was a destructive force and that it was just used as a thin veneer to push statism and Fabianism. Well, the first ever convention that went this way, that created the conventions that started to take away delegate powers, that started in 1832 with the Anti-Masonic Party. Folks, that was what became the Know Nothing Party, and then went on to be the progressive and populist movement. And this is populism. That's what it is. It's populism rearing its ugly head, and this corrupt system came directly out of populism. And we see now that the detrimental impacts of it are just far greater than we could have ever originally imagined. And it's not showing signs of getting better at any time in the foreseeable future.
Well, we have to stop this from happening. And
Yes, we do.
It's like I've mentioned several times on previous episodes, the beatings will continue until morale is improved. It's time that we stop taking the beatings, and it's time that we start issuing them. That's what needs to happen. We need to flip the tables on these individuals. We need to show them that whatever ill-gotten, totalitarian, Fabianistic dream that they have, their Trumptopia, is going to be the death and destruction of this republic. They don't understand that. They want to say that, well, you know, Hillary's more of a worse fear. No, she's not. Why? Because we know exactly what she's all about. We know what her tactics are. And if you know your enemy, you can defeat your enemy with much greater ease. With Trump, he's pulling all of this crap out of the woodwork. He's doing all this other stuff, got all these people in his pocket, part of his little mafioso, quafioso, Rinse and Repeatus. And they're doing all of this stuff to where it's discombobulating the American people. They have no idea what's going on, but yet they're still focused, and they have tunnel vision, or Trumple vision, as I'd like to call it now, to where they have a one-track mind. They don't want to believe anything else. They don't want to adhere to anything else. Even if it's the truth, even if they admit to it, they still will not adhere to it. That's the problem. Some of these individuals will even admit the truth that Trump has been involved with scandals. Trump has screwed people out of money and homes and, you know, their property and the like.
Mm-hmm.
But they say, well, that's how he was before. He's not like that now. He deserves a second chance.
Well, even Rinse and Repeatus was saying that he's going to change, but clearly not, particularly when Rinse and Repeatus is going around using the same mafioso, quafioso tactics. Now, in some of the Cruz pages on social media, there is discussion that constitutional attorneys are already involved in this and getting a fight going. And I can already hear the shrill voices of the Lion Branch Trumpidians in the back of my head as they sit there and try and say, oh, you guys are just butthurt. You guys just don't, Trump. Trump has goodly hair. Shut up. Go to hell. You people are trying to change this country. You are trying to plant the seeds of fascism in the body politic of the United States. Well, you're going to reap what you sow. Remember, we have warned time and again on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that you haven't seen real anger yet. The real anger is beginning now. You guys have pushed this intolerable, insufferable candidate. And by the way, when you say that it's just the majority of the people, no, that was from the rigged rules that came out of 2012. You guys are the ones that are sitting there playing right along with the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, in foisting this nightmare, this untenable situation down our throats against our will. Do not think we will forget, and do not think we will forgive. Because when you are tampering with the true sovereignty of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, you are asking for destruction. Because what that means is that you are trying to dismantle this country as it is meant to be. And that will never stand with us. Never.
Well, Randy, like you and I discussed earlier this evening, prior to beginning the show, this is akin to a very intrinsic historical event that helped shape and mold our republic. The Boston Tea Party.
Oh, yes.
Now, we're not equating this as part of the Tea Party movement by any stretch of the means, because even that has become corrupted to a certain degree. But think of this more as the RNC, Reince Priebus, and Trump and all of their ilk is nothing more than the British. That's who they are on this stage. Right here in this new kind of play that's occurring.
Yeah, the Lion Trumpidians are the Tories of this age.
Yeah, yes.
They are the Tories of this age.
And when we look at this, it's because the people were not allowed to have a voice, because there was undue tax set on them. And folks, tax doesn't have to do with it doesn't always apply to monetary meanings. Okay. There's an undue tax that's put on this country because of the Trump campaign. That undue tax is incivility. It's
a loss of civil discourse.
Right. So there's the tax that's equivalent that would have came out of the Tax Stamp Act. Okay. So let's look at that. And then, again, this is right along the lines of the Boston Tea Party. The people had enough. They finally spoke up and said, you know what? Screw you, screw your tax, screw this, screw that. We're not going to stand for it.
Yeah, because when you stop and think about it, what it comes down to with Trump and what they're doing here, it's that whole notion of virtual representation. I know we've mentioned this before. When you go back to Great Britain, they tried to say that because the colonists didn't have a say in who could be elected into the parliament in Great Britain that was housed in London, into either the House of Commons or the House of Lords, it didn't matter, because in their role and capacity as British citizens, and that had still the connotation of subject because of the sovereign and the centralized power of the British Parliament. But anyway, because they were British quote-unquote citizens, they had virtual representation. But and that's exactly what the RNC is saying here. That's what Reince and Repeatus is saying. They put out these little press feelers. They put out all of these little releases that say that, look, this is a sign of democracy in work, which, first of all, this isn't a democracy. A delegate system is part of a republic. And yes, there is a difference in so much as a republic guarantees the rights of the popular sovereign, the individual popular sovereign. What we're seeing here is a so-called tyranny of the majority, but it's not even a true tyranny of the majority, it's a tyranny of the minority. But they're saying that because the delegates are there, that's representation. Never mind the fact that they didn't allow the vote. Never mind the fact that they went on a voice call vote where clearly they then shut off the microphones because it was apparent that the nays were louder than the yays. This is Pravda style tactics. This comes straight out of the Soviet Union. It comes straight out of the German National Socialist Workers' Party. And remember, folks, that Trump said that he wanted to transform the Republican Party into a workers' party.
Well, and here's another point that I want to make with regard to this being akin to the Boston Tea Party. Part of that rebellion that took place, there was always the impetus put on the colonists and the American people by the British, always a forced loyalty. And if you rejected being loyal to the crown, then you were automatically an enemy of the crown, which is, again, how many times has Trump had people raise their hand and take an oath to be loyal to him?
At least 3 or 4 times.
At least
and
3 or
Jeremy,
4
there's another historical connotation I want to connect this to. Let's go and look at the Texas Revolution.
Yes.
What was the flag that they flew at the Alamo? Everybody will want to say that it was the Lone Star flag, but it was not.
No.
It was the tri-bar flag of Mexico with the year 1824 emblazoned in the middle. And what that was in reference to was the Constitution of 1824. It was a classically liberal document modeled off of the United States Constitution, believe it or not. And you had the hero, Generalissimo Antonio Lopez de Santana, who was the one that threw off Augustine I, who had tried to become king of Mexico and establish the 1824 Constitution. Then he promptly set himself up as a dictator. He was a very wealthy man, a billionaire by modern standards. He was very arrogant. He only cared about himself, ultimately. Are we starting to see a pattern here?
Yeah. And
because there's a connotation here.
I'm willing to bet that he had, goodly looking hair too.
He did, actually. He did.
So it's, again, this is history repeating itself. Why? Because we, the people, have failed to adhere to it or acknowledge it or even recognize it. And again, this is another byproduct of
revisionism and Fabianism.
Well, it's what I have called the 4 horsemen of the
Quaffpocalypse.
The Quaffpocalypse. It's revisionist history, political correctness, indoctrination, and moral relativism.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Those are the 4 horsemen of the Quaffpocalypse.
Yeah, and when people try and sit there and say that it's penultimate concerns that we need to be worried about, things like the economy, things like
the economy doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. When we are no longer a nation of a rule of law, when we are a nation that just allows ourselves to fall into these sorts of traps that have been set by these feckless, weak, spineless, jellyfish politicians, that is going to be the undoing of this republic unless we stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity and say enough is enough. Because how far are we going to let this go? This sort of shenanigans that we're seeing unfurl at this disastrous Republican National Convention there in Cleveland, Ohio, it's despicable. Now, we knew it would be despicable, but they are being far more brazen than they have ever been in the past. And, of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians are still coming out and trying to say that this is proof that it's the establishment trying to overthrow Trump. Now, where in the hell do they get that? Because it's the establishment that's rigged the whole system. And, of course, another thing I have to laugh about was what was the thing that Trump cried the loudest about all throughout the primary process. It was, the system's rigged against me. Yet he is the con artist. He's the one that's rigging it. It's always the schoolyard bully who cries the loudest when he gets his hair pulled. And clearly Trump's hair needs to be pulled.
Yeah. And again, this goes right back to what I was saying. It's time that we stop taking the beatings and we start issuing them. These individuals, specifically Trump, they think they're above the law. They think that they can do whatever they want. The law doesn't apply to them because they have this, they have that. They've got, ivory towers that they've built and blah, blah. I don't care. I really don't care. You individuals, speaking of the Trump Davidians and their ilk and all the other Fabians and Fabian lights, you don't matter. In so much that your arrogance, your narcissistic tendencies, your disregard for the Constitution, and complete ignorance and disregard for our rights When you want to violate the rights of other individuals just so that you can have whatever it is that you have that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, you no longer have a say. You have zero authority. You, in fact, are even worse than some of the worst terrorists on this planet. And I'll tell you why. Because the terrorists actually acknowledged people have rights. You don't even want to acknowledge the sovereign rights of other individuals. The terrorists know people have rights. That's what they fight against. That's why they do what they do, because they don't want people to have rights. But at least they acknowledge they have rights. You don't even want to acknowledge that we, the people, have rights. That makes you worse than the terrorists.
And I have a message for Paul Manafort, the campaign director there of the Quaff Waffler and the mafioso Quaffioso himself, when he sat there and he tried to say in a smug manner after the Rules Committee vote last week that never Trump was never more. Well, remember how I made that connection to Antonio Lopez de Santana? Remember, there was the Alamo and Goliad, two massacres before there was San Jacinto. Guess what there, you little Trump tard? Our San Jacinto is about to begin. You have just caused the runaway scrape to begin. We are going to drag this out. We are more fiercely determined now than ever to silence you. You will not silence us. We have the right of truth on our side. We will do everything in our power to stop you. You have proven to us that you are more corrupt than Hillary Clinton. And what makes you even worse is that you have taken the Fabian socialist message, the Fabian socialist line, to its furthest extent. You have embraced the original iconography of that group that traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain. The Fabian Socialist Society, as we have so oft times mentioned here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, traces its origins back to England and then bases its iconography on that of a wolf in sheep's clothing, the way Scripture described that Satan would move about society and pervert the traditions and institutions within society. And Paul Manafort has taken that to the greatest extent with Trump. Trump is a Trojan horse or a Trojan quaff. He's both. That's where we are. We are there, and we see that they are doubling down on these efforts to silence the voice of the true people. And then to sit there and say that those of us that are trying to just have a simple roll call, that's somehow trying to deny Trump the nomination, that's a load of bovine excrement. That is a cop-out. That is an excuse. What we are trying to do here is to make sure they play by the rules. Why do we have criminal defense attorneys? Why do we have a criminal justice system? To keep things in order, but we also need to keep the government in line to make sure that they don't infringe upon rights. So that's what was happening here, and it's clear now that he would infringe upon every right in the book, that he would do everything in his power just to have his way, irrespective of whom it harms and the deleterious and detrimental impact that it would have on this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And we just cannot allow that to continue and to go unabated. We just can't.
Well, and we're not going to, because
no.
We, Randy, you and I both have sat here on numerous occasions, and we've made that solemn promise that we're not going to allow that to happen. And folks, we're going to do everything within our powers, even if it takes our dying breath, to preserve this republic of ours. I don't care who we have to stand toe-to-toe against. I don't care what means we have to go to in order to do it. Because here's the fact. We have an obligation. Each and every one of us, Randy and I, and each and every one of you, we all have an obligation. Self-preservation for our sovereign individualism. And if we cannot preserve our own sovereignty as individuals, how are we going to preserve and protect the sovereignty of the innocent in this country, our children, our posterity? We owe it to them. It is our obligation, our burden to bear, to make sure that they have a country, a republic that they can live in with liberties and freedoms that we have now. And if we don't preserve them now, they will never be preserved for our children and their children.
This is why we have said for so long that you don't want to be looking for some sort of messianic figure to come prancing out of Providence on a quaff-shaped cloud. This is the danger that Trump has posed. This is why we have been so vociferous about Trump and the Lion Branch Trumpidians, because they are dismantling our representative Republican form of government, and they are projecting. They're trying to claim that it is those of us who are seeking to vote our conscience that have caused this problem. No. The Republican National Committee has created this problem by ignoring the will of the American voters for so long. But remember that when you allow yourself to become blinded by rage, just to act on sheer blind fury, it means that you become very easily susceptible to manipulation. And that is what Donald Trump has been doing. He is a masterful manipulator. And that is why we see the sorts of shenanigans going on the convention floor that we saw today. It's because they are attempting to try and force the matter. They're trying to force the matter into fitting their agenda. And they are so ham-handed about it, so ham-fisted about it, that it's glaring, open, and obvious. That's why one of Trump's top donors, what was his name, Jeremy? I think it was Enos or something like that.
Emineth.
He
I think
has completely pulled his support for Trump, saying that you can't do this in America. Now, I know I mentioned that at the opening of tonight's program, but it is so important because when you stop and think about it, this isn't just about the Republican Party. It's not just about the 2016 election cycle. This is about the very future foundation of this country, the continued vitality and viability of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. As Jeremy was saying there, it is our duty, our obligation, and above all, our responsibility to ensure that the up-and-coming generation, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born, are able to exercise and enjoy their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights with even greater ease than we ourselves.
Here's the other thing. Trump, during his whole campaign, is spouted off this thing about being a winner. He wants we the people to win. He wants us to win. Now, how does that work when you send a message like that? We're going to win again. We're going to win. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But yet, when we have the opportunity and it presents itself to where we can win as sovereign citizens and individuals in this country again, and then all of a sudden he's behind completely shutting that down. See, he doesn't want people to win in the true sense of the fashion of remaining sovereign individuals in a free republic. He wants people to win according to his narrative. It's right. Kind of like, a baseball coach that doesn't preach or practice with his ball players the means of sportsmanship. Instead, he wants to drill into them, win at all costs. It doesn't matter if you have to lie, cheat, and steal, do this or do that. Although stealing in baseball is actually kind of legal.
Not if you get caught.
Not if you're caught. But the point is, Trump is acting just like a baseball coach that I knew during Little League. None of the other Little League players, liked him. In fact, they were afraid of him. They were scared to death of him. I remember friends of mine in Little League that were drafted on his team because in Little League, they would have a draft. All the coaches would get together and they draft their teams. And not only were players scared to death of being on this guy's team, but the parents didn't even want their kids on his team. And this guy threw such a fit because some of those players, those little leaguers, were so good at what they were doing, what they did. They were very talented ball players. And when they were yanked off his team, he threw a fit. He went to the board of the Little League and actually threw a fit and had it to where they would put an injunction to where they had to be put back on his team.
Mm-hmm.
Because all he wanted to do was win by his means. Now, that's the same way with Trump. He's the same way. He wants to win, but he only wants people to be on his team that are willing to do it his way. Not the way of the Constitution, not the way that's legal, not the way to be done in accordance with our laws, but his way. It's his way or no way. Now, again, this goes right back to the only statement that Hillary Clinton is going to have to make. You can't even keep your party unified. You want to preach about unity this and unity that. And folks, we've called BS on this whole unity debacle right from the get-go. We said it was a facade, a masquerade. We saw it right from the get-go. And now one of Trump's biggest donors, Mr. Emineth, I believe, is the one, or not Emineth, but it was actually Mike Lee. Senator Mike Lee even came right out and said, look, it's a masquerade of unity. That's what it is.
Yeah.
See, people are starting to realize what's going on. And all Hillary has to do is say, you can't even keep your party unified, but you preached unity. If you can't even keep your own party unified, how are you going to keep the country unified and lead the country?
And you know why they're pushing for the false unity? It's like what the brown shirts did when they tried to say that the Nazis had the majority vote to get Hitler into the, appointed to the chancellorship by Hindenburg there. It was because they had said, look, we are the largest party. We have the greatest majority. This is about unity. Either you support us or you are with the communists. And then when they had the Reichstag fire, that was to push a tyranny of false unity. So that is something that has been used historically to create these sorts of political movements. And that's what Trump is doing. Do not think that Trump has not studied this. Trump does push off this view that he's a bit of a buffoon, but he is not when it comes to power. It's not when it comes to a forceful takeover. In fact, even the ghostwriter for The Art of the Deal came out and said that he should have spoken sooner, that when Trump was saying all of this crap, he's a sociopath, that Trump didn't believe anything that he really wrote in The Art of the Deal. That was the ghostwriter that created it. And we see that that is a true common thread with respect to the mafioso quafioso. All of these people who have gotten to know him intimately say that he is this sort of unstable, sociopathic type person and has that controlling, narcissistic personality. And we see that's playing out. Hitler had that too.
Yeah.
Hitler had that too. And it's about rejection.
Well, let's go back and look at one of the simple facts that we've mentioned numerous times regarding Trump. What was his nighttime reading material?
Hitler's speeches.
Hitler's speeches. Folks, don't think for a minute that he hasn't studied this stuff and built himself up and educated himself on how to do these things.
And Jeremy, a dear friend of mine said that one of the retorts that her father had for those who tried to make comparisons between Trump and the various fascist movements, whether it be Mussolini, or Hitler, it was, well, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf and Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. Except that Hitler actually wrote Mein Kampf and Trump did not actually write
The Art of the Deal.
The Art of the, The Art of the Squeal.
Yeah.
That was done by a ghostwriter. And the ghostwriter said that Trump didn't know anything about it, that he used it to create a scenario where he was putting lipstick on a pig. So that argument that's being made, basically how to be a millionaire, that's not what Trump was trying to tell you. Trump was just trying to market there. It was marketeering at its absolute worst, because what he wanted to do was to push products, to get his name known. And so if he had written, or quote unquote written, had a ghostwriter write, really, a self-help guide to getting rich based off of his personality or lack thereof, then he would be able to get his name out there and begin marketing. What we see out there is a brand. And what bigger brand ever came out of any political movement in history than the Nazi brand? Everybody knows what the swastika means. Everybody knows the symbolism of the Nazis. Everybody knows what the Nazi Party was. Now, they may not know the intrinsic parts of it or the little eccentricities of it, such as the fact that it stands for the National Socialist German Workers' Party,
Yeah.
but they understand that it was a force for evil. And Trump has taken a great amount of inspiration from that. That's why he would keep that book next to his bed. That's why he would read those speeches. That's why he's doing what he's doing.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to tie this in, and this is probably going to blow a lot of people's minds, although it shouldn't, because we've mentioned this before. And at the onset of tonight's episode, when I mentioned that Trump had no intentions of winning whatsoever, and any doubt that anybody would have about that should be put to rest with what happened on the floor of the convention today. Here's the deal. This is what's going on. Trump has used this whole entire campaign, and I've mentioned this before. He only ran for president for one thing: to build his empire, to build his legacy. He doesn't care about anything else. He stands to gain more money and more power and prestige from running this campaign and purposely throwing it and failing than he would as if he wouldn't have even jumped in the race to begin with, because now his name, his brand is out there. He has no intention of winning. If he had any intention of winning, why in the hell would he have fired every single one of his ground people, his staff, in all the primary states that he won? If you won those primary states, it's only logical to fortify those positions to keep that movement going, keep the momentum going. But no, he put a screeching halt to that. He purposely derailed his own Trump train in those states. Why? Because he stands to make more money by running a campaign that's built on a false facade of unity and everything else that he's preached, because it's labeling is what it comes down to. And here's another example, another analogy. Look at boxing out in Vegas. There's been incidents where boxers have actually made more money than the winner. The loser has made more money than the winner. Why? Because the loser would purposely throw the fight. Because his people would go ahead and bet on him, i.e., bolster him up, and they would take the odds of him knowing he's going to lose and throw the fight. They would bet on him throwing the fight.
Oh, you mean like Mike Tyson, who was put up by Trump to do that? Yeah.
Yes. See, this isn't about him becoming president. This isn't about him being the leader of the free world. This isn't about him giving a damn about America and wanting to make it great again. This is about him bolstering up his war chest and his own coffers at the expense of we, the people.
And it's just like every other little scam that he's done. The hotel partners that he's cheated, like Holiday Inn and Hyatt and all of these various
Trump
other companies.
University.
It's like how he's tried to do any of this. And we know that he does this sort of thing because he's been paying his own family's salaries out of this, his own salary out of the company. I doubt he has the type of wealth that he claims. And that's why he's refusing to open up his tax records.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he's under an audit, we know because Richard Nixon released his that is just not true, that you can't release it when you're under audit. And because he's seeking the highest office in the land, I think he needs to release them, particularly after we saw this sort of roughhousing at the convention floor on the first night of the Gutless Opposition Party convention. It needs to come out. It needs to come out. We need to get back to a rule of law, and we do that by going back to the basics, and we need to know that the man's honest. Of course, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, know that Trump has never been honest, and we've been saying that for 11 and a half months now, folks, and nothing has occurred in the interim to make us formulate a different opinion with regards to him, particularly on that account, because he is trying to pull the political wool over the eyes of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, he's using the emotions of people to subvert their rights and using that as a political football to kick down the field. all for his own personal gain. Now, if that is not the most disingenuous, if that doesn't breach being borderline tyrannical, because let's face it, in a way, he is a tyrant. He wants to be a tyrant. He wants to be the world's most powerful person. And in today's perception of reality, the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah.
Trump wants to be one of the most wealthiest individuals. And the thing is, he wraps all these things up and twists everything up and just creates this huge cluster, Farouk, of everything to where nobody can weed through it. Nobody can make sense of it, heads or tails of it. And that's all part of the purpose and agenda with this. You distract everybody with mundane crap to where you could turn around and siphon funds off. You could shift funds here. You could do this. You could do that, all to give the perception that you have this kind of wealth. And the only way for him to be able to solidify that, because he's been caught with that, he's been caught doing that. Now, the only way that he can make it seem legitimate is to pull a stunt like this to where his whole campaign is nothing more than a billboard in motion. That's all it is. His whole campaign is nothing but a giant billboard in motion.
And the other thing is, he can go out and now claim that all of these things that are against him are just because people didn't like him because he was running for president.
Yeah. Which is going to be used as a marketing tactic to say, well, people don't like this. So human nature, people don't like something, or certain people don't like it. It's the bait and switch. More other people are going to gravitate to it.
Right. And so, it's like the old saying goes, there is no bad publicity. All publicity is good publicity. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it matters more for the country. This is why we have so oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that the United States of America is not a business, and you cannot run it as such. It's because our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are non-negotiable. Now, Trump has already stated on numerous occasions in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that everything is up for negotiation. And Hillary has already attacked that. She's already said that there are things that are not up for negotiations. Remember that Israel pact, that pact that was there back in March or April, somewhere around there. She uttered that line. And I'm like, I knew she would go there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an attack that is going to resonate in the general election cycle. People are going to remember that. And all she has to say is our national security is non-negotiable.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. This is why Trump is more dangerous than Hillary, because Hillary's predictable. See, we know exactly how Hillary's going to pull this. What she's going to do is everything that Trump has done, again, with the happenings at the convention today, she's going to use that as, and we all know that the Fabians are the ones who have created the balkanization, the divisiveness in this country. Trump hasn't done anything to stop it. He's actually emboldened it and perpetuated it. Okay. But here's the thing. All she has to do, she has a patsy now. All she has to do, again, is say, well, even though we created it, but she's not going to say we created this, even though at this point, she could actually say that and get away with it. But she's going to shift all the blame off of her and the Fabians and their ilk directly onto Trump. That's classic propaganda 101. You utilize your opponent's events and actions and words against them. Every agenda that they have, whatever their mantra is, you take it, you spin it in the direction to where it's not going to be coming back at you, to where you make it boomerang proof. Specifically, is mentioned in Goebbels' Principles of Propaganda. In order for propaganda to be effective, it must be boomerang proof. She's going to take it as a boomerang, throw it at Trump, and guess what? It's not going to come back to her. All the stuff that the Fabians created and Trump helped perpetuate, and he perpetuated this not only through his own ignorance and narcissistic ways and him being an egomaniac, but in some ways, he actually wanted this to happen. Remember, he's best friends with the Clintons. They're very good friends.
Mm-hmm.
They owe each other favors. And for Trump to, sit there, and I haven't paid that much attention to the whole thing with, the issue that came out with Benghazi about, they're ceasing all prosecutions and, they're not going to go after Hillary, this and that. I haven't heard anything about Trump saying that or admonishing that.
No. He hasn't admonished that. Oh, and the other thing is, when that announcement came out, he went out of his way to do a gaffe that put him back in the news.
Oh.
Which, again, is subterfuge.
Mm-hmm.
This is subterfuge. And it makes me wonder, what exactly is it that Hillary has offered to pay him? And I'm thinking it's to give him some cushy international deals with her connections through State Department and then the Clinton Foundation. And it's to prevent the damage and tarnishment to his reputation. Now, we already know that the volume of people staying at Trump hotels has been halved since he jumped into the race. And that's because of his vulgarian ways. That's because of who he is and what he has been doing this entire time. And it just goes against everything that we hold near and dear in this country. And you see, folks, it's not about just being a businessman, and it's not just about trying to prove that something matters. Remember when he was on Megyn Kelly's program that one time, and he explained that if he lost, it would be the biggest colossal waste of time and money.
Yeah.
Nothing about the American people, nothing about that it would be dangerous to them to have somebody like Hillary Clinton in. Of course not, because back in 2009, or actually 2008, he was a Hillary supporter.
Mm-hmm.
That was when he was in full hate George W. Bush mode. He still hates George W. Bush. And irrespective of what you think of Bush, he hated him for the wrong reasons. And he said that he thought Hillary would make a fantastic president. He then said that that Barack Hussein Obama was doing a fantastic job as president and that nobody else could do it like him. And then, of course, you recall that we brought up on one of our previous episodes here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that he said he didn't care whether the president was a Democrat or a Republican as long as it was a strong president.
Well, we have to have a definition of what strong means. Is it
strong?
Man.
Strong man like Hitler. Strong man like Mussolini. Strong man.
Because that is, in the true essence of the word, not what strong means. Because a strong president would be one who adheres to the Constitution, one who has read the Constitution, one who sees intrinsic value in it. Therefore, by seeing intrinsic value in the Constitution, sees intrinsic value in the popular sovereigns.
Right. But if you go back to what he was saying about Obama being a good president, it was because he was doing things no one else could. Right there. He thinks that the presidency should be some imperial thing. Mm-hmm. He's got this Napoleon complex about him, into which he thinks that all power should be vested in him, that he is the complete and total say. And that's what makes this 2016 presidential election cycle so dangerous, is just how much power has been vested with the highest office in the land that it was never constitutionally enumerated to have. And so it means that they have transformed it into something that is far more powerful than it was ever constitutionally intended to be. It shows that when Congress is feckless, and that's why we call the GOP not the grand old party, but the gutless opposition party, it's because, again, they're doing nothing within the purview of the powers directly and specifically enumerated unto them to prevent this erosion of the separation of powers. And Trump would be a continuation of that. We see how he pays such little regard to any type of law. We know that from his own flapping gums, we receive the words that he's never read the Constitution corner to corner because he found no intrinsic value in it. Folks, it's not as though he's trying to hide this. It's not as though this is some great mystery. You don't need a rocket surgeon like Dr. Ben, I'm a Victim Carson to figure this out. You really don't.
And see, that's what makes it so viable for him, and it works for him so well with the propaganda.
Yeah.
Because the best place to hide something that you don't want anybody to see is the last place to look, right in front of their face.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. And you have all these people, all these Trump-tardians, these Trump-Luddites, sitting there saying, well, we have to prevent Hillary from getting in, so we have to have Trump. Because, if Hillary gets in, then we're going to have 40 years of the Supreme Court that's just going to trash the Constitution. They're trashing the Constitution now.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? At this point, what difference does it make? Because here's the fact, and I'm not condoning or saying go out and vote for Hillary. By no means. What I'm saying is people need to
better be served jumping off a cliff.
People better come to grips with reality, because guess what? The Supreme Court doesn't mean squat in this election, and I'll tell you why. Because Hillary could get elected. She could stack the Supreme Court however she wants. And they can make whatever rulings they want. And guess what? All you have to do is say no. Because the Supreme Court has no powers of contempt. They cannot punish people for not following their rulings, period. They do not have power of contempt. They cannot penalize anybody for that. They don't have that authority. Okay?
Right. Remember when Andrew Jackson, with the Trail of Tears ruling, he said, oh, great. The Supreme Court has made its ruling. Now come enforce it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that we need to take into mind with all of this. It's when they sit there and they say that, well, the Supreme Court, this election's over, we're doomed. No. They've said that for the last 2 successive presidential election cycles. They have forced us into that these last 2 election cycles. And how has that served us? Is President Romney in his 2nd term yet? How about President McCain? How's his term doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's not there. It's because the Republican Party or the gutless opposition party or GOP does not stand for anything. When what they really should be standing for is strict adherence to the United States Constitution, the natural law tenets that underpin it, and the entire representative Republican form of government we have. That's why the name was Republican. But that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're standing for. They're just against Hillary. Oh, you're going to let your fear of Hillary blind you. So we are now moving from blind rage to blind fear.
Yeah.
Either one of those forms of raw emotionalism are going to leave you up to be totally susceptible to manipulation.
And a lifetime of servitude on your knees, because that's what it's going to come down to. And the GOP, the gutless opposition party, they're already there. Let's take a few key examples. Let's go back to Fast and Furious. Darrell Issa and even Trey Gowdy had dealings with that. Was anybody prosecuted under Fast and Furious? No. Is Fast and Furious still happening today? Yes, it is. There are firearms that are being confiscated from individuals and then from these drug cartel members, and then they're turned around and sold back to the drug cartel members. So it's a vicious cycle over and over and over. They are still allowing gun running to be conducted across our borders. Has anybody stepped up to stop it? No. Where's Darrell Issa in this? Nowhere to be found or heard. Where's Trey Gowdy? Oh, well, he decided he was going to take another tangent and go on this Benghazi thing, which he did nothing with. All he would have had to do, or anybody on that committee, or anybody in Congress, either house, period, petition the federal court for a special prosecutor. Done deal. The DOJ, you can't have them investigate this. You can't have them prosecute this. That's like going to the sheriff's department and having the sheriff who's out committing murder go to him and have him investigate himself. It can't be done. But no, they didn't want to follow along with that. So guess what they did? They have broken the law. They have committed what's known as misprision of a felony. They know these things went on, but yet they did nothing to see it full tilt through due process to bring them to justice. They skirted the law, they ignored it, and negated their obligations For what? A dog and pony show so that they can retain their seats. Guess what? You want to keep issuing these beatings because the morale of the individuals and the popular sovereigns is diminished and gone? Again, it's time that we start issuing the beatings.
Yeah. And it has to be that way in order for us to really be able to overcome these things. We have to stand up now. And I say this because it is so important that we stand up for our fundamental and inalienable rights and to be proactive, because that's what our founding fathers told us to do. And it has to be done. It just does.
We can't waver in this. We have to be vigilant. We have to be unrelenting in this. These individuals, they want to take and utilize these Fabian and socialist tactics and these Gestapo-like tactics. Guess what? It's time we start doing that with them. It's time we start using their own rules against them. You know, growing up, one of the lessons that my father gave my brothers and I is when it comes to situations where you should be the person in control and you have individuals that want to impede on that, and they want to do this, they want to sway you from doing this, they want to force you to play some kind of game. Guess what? You play the game, but you make them play by your rules. See, this is what Trump has done in his whole campaign. He has set his own rules, and he has forced the American people to play along by his rules. Many of us have rejected those rules. You know, your rules suck. We're not playing your game. You're going to play our game. You think you want to call yourself the greatest negotiator? You're nothing. I guarantee you, Trump, if you and I were in a room together, I could out-negotiate you with no problem. And here's why. I know what you're all about. I know the tactics you use. I know you better than you think I do. But you know nothing about me. I'm the unpredictable factor. And that is how negotiations are done. When the other side cannot predict you and they have no idea what you're all about, you hold all the cards. That's how that works. And guess what, Trump? This little game you're playing, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose big. Why? Because you are the biggest loser to ever walk the face of this planet.
He literally is. And it's something he hates. He hates being called a loser, again, because he's this egotist. He thinks that he has to go out and be the bigliest of big, and that is just a ridiculous position to hold. And we see that time and time again, that this is being used, this false persona that he puts out. And why is he doing it? Why is he putting this fake weave out there to cause a quapocalypse? It's because he wants to redefine the Republican Party. Again, not just the Republican Party, but conservatism. This is an assault on conservatism. It goes against everything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And this is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have gone out of our way to try and warn you about these dangers, these specific and significant risks that are facing us. And Trump is the greater danger here. We know who Hillary is. I know that Jeremy has said this so many times, but it's true. We know who Hillary is, and therefore we know how to combat Hillary. Trump is presenting the actual threat to destroying the vitality and viability of conservatism for generations and decades to come. He is the Herbert Hoover of this era.
Yes.
And remember that Hoover was in 1929. Conservatism went into hibernation between 1929 and 1964. Folks, this time around, we simply cannot afford to allow that to happen. We can ill afford to allow the country to go any further to the left, because we're already standing precariously close to the edge of the cliff, about to fall into the political abyss, which would be the complete, utter annihilation and destruction of the United States.
See, Trump has, again, and I know it's like, you know, kicking a dead horse in the teeth, but it's the thing about him. that makes him predictable. Now, folks would say, well, before you said he was unpredictable. Well, yes, he's unpredictable, but he's predictable. It's kind of a weird thing. It's almost like a catch-22, but not. See, he's predictable in looking at him in hindsight and what he's done. So we could use that to predict how he's going to continue to behave. Where he's unpredictable is we don't know exactly when he's going to do those things. That's the only unpredictability about him, is we don't know when he's going to do these things. Why? Because he's so bold and so brash and spontaneous about his things. He has no patience. And that is the flaw that's going to bury him if becomes the nominee of the gutless opposition party. Because Hillary has more patience than anybody could ever think of. And the proof in the pudding is this. When she vacated her seat as senator of the state of New York to take a temporary position as Secretary of State, she did that because she was going to mount an attempt at the presidency. Wasn't exactly sure when, but I knew it was going to happen. And I told people this was going to happen. People thought I was nuts. They said I was insane. Well, guess what? Those same people are now saying, oh, gee, I should have listened to you before. It always comes back to, oh, I wish I would have listened to you then. I should have listened to you.
And they should be listening to us now.
Yes.
They should be. Because what Trump is doing is literally, he is playing the part of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. He is purposefully trying to push us to satisfy and satiate all of those two-dimensional caricatures that the left attempts to pigeonhole the right with. And they've always done that. And he is the one that is fully bringing that about, because there are true disillusioned conservatives who just want to see the whole system burn down, to see the whole structure burn down, so they turn to the arsonist. Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense? It goes down to the lines of those people that sit there and say that, well, they just want to stick it to the establishment and Trump's not a politician and Trump's an outsider. Well, let's say that what we saw on the convention floor there in Cleveland today and this evening puts that to bed forever. When the establishment was running out there doing all they could to silence people, using armed guards to remove delegates that had violated no rules, had violated no laws, and then replace them with Trump alternates, that is the mafia tactics that we've been warning about. We said that he would do this. We said that he was a deplorable candidate, that he would be terrible, and that he would be self-destructive. Well, here it is. It's come to full fruition now. And I'll be damned if these people, Jeremy, can sit there and blame us for a Hillary victory.
Well, because
it ain't going to happen. They can go to hell, because the only ones they can blame for that are themselves.
Yep. And the failure on their part, and them negating the facts of listening and heeding the warnings. How many individuals have we talked to personally and through social media, on the phone, whatever, that they just want to say, and basically what it boils down to is their response is, yeah, but Trump. They always want to make an excuse to try and justify their own ignorance, their own negating of what's going on, to justify not accepting reality of what it is.
There's two types of Trumpster dumpsters here, Jeremy. There's those that are just so afraid of Hillary that they'll let that fear petrify them and cause them to march behind him because they think he's the only way to win. You have those who project their own hopes and aspirations on him and project their own identity onto him. That's a dangerous combination.
Well, what that is no self-esteem whatsoever. They're looking for this individual and say,
A messianic figure.
A messianic figure. Well, if I put him up and he gets elected, that means that I could be just like him.
Yeah.
What does the Bible say about beware of false prophets? Because that's what he is. He is a false prophet. He is the golden quaff.
He is the mangy, dandruff-laced
he
wolf
is
pelt.
The golden quaff that was erected and fashioned at the foothills of Mount Sinai
but,
when Moses went up to get the Ten Commandments.
To tie it into the Fabian Socialists, he is a wolf with really bad dandruff putting on a sheep coif to try and infiltrate us. It's just that sheep pelt looks ridiculous and should be open and obvious to anyone that's looking at it in an objective fashion, because for the vast majority of his 70 years on God's green earth, he has embraced every Fabian socialist position known to man.
And possibly helped create a couple himself.
Oh, sure. He certainly enabled it by funding the worst offenders of that. Think about how we have Terry McAuliffe there in Virginia.
Yeah.
You know who gave him all that money? It was Trump. Trump has donated more money to frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are dedicated to the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people, than he ever has for conservatives. And when people try and sit there and say that, well, no, he's actually given more to Republicans, I guess they'll go to sources like Prentley. You know, I sure haven't heard that source lately. Have you?
I haven't seen it. Why? I wonder why that is. Is it? Oh, that's right. It no longer serves his purpose, so he shut it down. Now, with all that said, can somebody, anyone, tell me, please, how Hillary is more of a danger and more of a threat than Trump is? Oh, they can't. If you have an individual that is sitting there manipulating the system, perpetuating it, funding it, utilizing its tactics full tilt, rather than just a person who's just utilizing the tactics, doing a little bit of the funding or actually accepting the funding, who's more dangerous? Again, we know what Hillary is all about. We know what she is going to do because she's predictable. She follows that line of the Fabians. She walks it very tightly. She walks it like a tightrope. Trump is bouncing around. It's like he's got a stick horse, you know, trying to flop around on this thing, and he's all over
away.
Yeah, and he's all over the place. But there's a reason why he's all over the place. It's all by design of him. It's called, like Randy said earlier, subterfuge.
Yeah.
He wants to create all these mundane things, all these little tantrums, these Trumper tantrums, and all these little incidents. Punch him in the face. Go ahead and knock the person out. Let him take him out on a stretcher. I'll pay your legal fees. That's just another, hey, pay attention to the shiny object over here while this hand is reaching into your pockets or reaching into your chest and ripping out your soul and depriving you of being a sovereign citizen.
Yeah.
Or flicking a bick and setting a fire, setting the Constitution ablaze, because he has no love for the Constitution.
Well, you know he's going to be using hairspray to do that, to create one of those homemade flamethrowers.
Sure.
You know, the whole thing with Trump is all you had to do is look at his past statements. But everybody just wanted to turn their ears off to that. Everybody wanted to just ignore that and say, I don't care.
He doesn't have that viewpoint now. That's not what he thinks now.
Really? Then why was he funding Terry McAuliffe in 2014? Why in 2012 was he saying that Mitt Romney's position on self-deportation of illegal aliens was too mean-spirited? Why now, when he said that he was going to build a wall, is he selecting Mike Pence to be his running mate, who was for open borders and for allowing illegal aliens in the state of Indiana to receive in-state tuition?
Oh, the Dream Act. Oh.
Or how about the same Mike Pence that said he was against Common Core, got rid of it, and then implemented Common Core standards at even worse rates under a state plan?
Oh.
Kind of like John Kasich.
Yeah. Well, how about in 2013 when he supported Feinstein's assault weapons ban?
For Trump, yes.
For Trump. See, all of these things, he says, oh, I'm pro-Second Amendment. No, you're not. You're only pro-Second Amendment when it fits you, when it applies to you, when it allows you to do what you need to do in your daily activities. But when it comes to anybody else, no, they're not allowed. People cannot even go to his properties, step foot on his property.
Sure, because they're gun-free zones.
Because they're gun-free zones.
And here's the other thing about Pence. You know, one of the things that Trump and Pence are trying to make a big deal about is repeal but replace Obamacare. Pence was one of those governors, along with Kasich, that expanded Medicaid to go along with Obamacare.
What section of the Constitution does it allow to repeal and replace
Article non-section existent, clause 0. And guess what it's right next to? Guess what it's right next to? The bovine excrement clause.
Oh. Yeah. So see, I always forget that. I can't ever remember that.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
Yeah.
It must have been written in invisible ink. But
it was on the back of the Declaration of Independence.
You see, it was those damn Masons. That's why we had to have the anti-Masonic party to create political conventions.
Yeah.
But the reason that we're seeing the Republican National Convention that's being held in Cleveland, Ohio, as we speak into our microphones right here and right now, is because they have taken a position against the people. And this is the most glaring, open, and obvious stance that they have done that with. They're not treating us with respect. In fact, that was one of the complaints that Mike Lee had. He said, if you truly want unity, start by giving us our due respect. Yeah. Start by respecting the position that these people have. You know why our armed forces salute the commander-in-chief, even if it's a ridiculous loser like Obama? It's because you respect the office, not the man. Yes. Well, the same thing is with delegates. They are elected into that office. And by refusing to allow them to have a vote, you know, all those Trumpers that are having the Trumper tantrum saying that the Never Trump movement is trying to disquiet those who voted or to disrupt the vote of the states. Well, guess what? Those delegates that were elected for other candidates that were trying to have a roll call done on the Rules Committee, when you don't allow them to have a say, you are silencing the voices of those voters and of those states.
You damn hypocrites.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what you are. See, here's the thing. Again, this is another Fabian tactic. They create the problem early on, and then they utilize that problem to manipulate and actually do the problem, to actually implement it. That's what Fabians do. Now, by disallowing those delegates to be able to vote because they're ushered out of there at gunpoint
or held up before being even... See, here's the other thing. They were prevented from entering, and then it was said that they were late, and that's why they weren't allowed to come in and vote.
Oh, well,
another tactic.
Well, here's the thing. There's 5 amendments within the Constitution, I believe.
Yes.
That all pertain to voting. Now, people would say, well, that only applies to people voting at the polls. No. This applies specifically here because the sole purpose of those delegates is to vote for our nominee for that party. And when they're not allowed to do that, and then that nominee is just handed the nomination, You are in violation of the Constitution because you've abridged the vote of those delegates, you have abridged the vote of every single person within those states that those delegates came from, because the people, the sovereign citizens of those states, voted for those delegates to go and represent them to vote and nominate an individual for presidency.
Well, let's break it down and make it even simpler than that. Delegate. What does that term mean? It means delegated authority.
Yes.
Whose delegated authority is that? Well, much like the delegated authority to rule for the federal government, it comes from the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people.
Thus, we have a violation.
So you lying Branch Trump Vidians, go straight to hell, because what you're trying to do here has no connotation or connection with reality. None whatsoever. Absolutely bar none.
And that is a direct violation of the 10th Amendment, which is par for the course with this campaign because, well, let's see, he's violated the First Amendment rights of individuals. He violates the Second Amendment rights of individuals with his properties being gun-free zones. Let's see. Oh, he violates due process by offering to pay the legal fees of individuals for doing this. He's perpetuating and inciting people to commit a crime. That is not how due process works. That is violative of due process.
And yet, you don't have to have a very good background check or character and fitness to be president. But actually, you do. Because in order to faithfully execute the laws of the land,
you have to know what they're written on in pursuance of.
And you have to be a virtuous person. That's the whole idea of a virtuous republic. That is what the United States of America was always intended to be. That's what our founding fathers wanted us to be. Unfortunately, we've fallen from that because of this meticulous effort on the part of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, their allies, the historical revisionists, and their other allies, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, moving forth with this well-orchestrated plan to fundamentally and irreparably transform the United States of America away from being that of a constitutionally endowed representative republic to the sort of chaos that we're seeing unfurl on that convention floor there in Cleveland. Now, I'm sure that Rush Limbaugh is going to try and come out and say that this is unpatriotic. In fact, he was already saying that today, that anyone who is against Donnie there in Cleveland is clearly just part of the establishment. Hey, Rush, turn up your cochlear implant so you can hear this clearly. Go to hell. You are wrong. Here, let me count out the ways you're wrong, Rush. In 2008, Rushy there said that, John McCain's going to win in a landslide. Okay. And then in 2012, he said, Mitt Romney, he's going to win in a landslide. Now he's saying that Donald Trump is going to beat Hillary in a landslide. Are you sensing a pattern here? Because I sure as hell am.
I don't understand what's with these people. Is he doing it for ratings? Is he doing it to fatten his own pockets? I don't know. I really don't care. None of that matters because he's absolutely wrong in what he's doing. Absolutely wrong. And see, it's people like Rush Limbaugh, when they make statements like that, they are adding to the perpetuity of the problem that is dissolving our republic. He's fanning the flames. Is all he's doing. His windbag inside his chest that is being loosed when he opens that gaping maw of his is fanning the flames that is burning our republic to the ground. Well, Rush is a conservative. No, he's not. I'm sorry, Rush is not a conservative. He doesn't even, I don't think he even understands what the true meaning of conservative is. And he sure as hell is not a constitutional compositionist. I guarantee that.
In fact, that's why we've created the term. Yes. Rush may have been a conservative 15 years ago. In fact, I will say he was one 15 years ago.
Not now.
But not now. But you see, he's trying to go along with the evolution because he thinks this Trumper tantrum is going to be a permanent thing. I think he's just been at it for a little too long now, and that he can't see the forest spite the trees. And that is going to be his downfall. That is what's going to unwork him. And it is disingenuous for him to sit there and say that all of us are for Hillary if we're not for the Quaff Waffler. I'm sick of that crap. Just am.
It never ceases to amaze me. And I'm completely flabbergasted by this. The individuals, they can't understand the simple concept that never Trump
means never.
Means never. Has nothing to do with Cruz. It has nothing to do with supporting Hillary in any shape or fashion. Because if we're not going to support Trump, why in the blue hell would we support Hillary? Are people that delusional to think just because we don't support one person? See, here's the thing, folks. Evil is evil. And we have two evil entities, the mafioso quafioso and the whore of Babylon.
Hey, Jeremy, step right up. Jeremy, step right up. Step right up. Well, I've got 2 prizes here for you. On the one hand, you can be shot in the right eye. On the other hand, you can be shot in the left eye. Which would you rather be shot in?
Gee, I don't know, Randy. I think I'll take being shot in the left eye because I'm right eye dominant. Seriously, I mean, this is... We could come up with a whole slew of caricatures and anomalies and analogies.
You want to be shot in the right temple or the left temple? Which one? Yeah.
It's just people need to understand that evil is evil. And when you have an individual who sees no value, no intrinsic value in the very document that secures our sovereignty and guarantees our liberties, he doesn't see any value in we the people.
Yeah.
It's not hard to understand. If someone could find me a brain scientist that can point this out to me, I don't know, let's go get Sir Shankslock, Dr. I'm a Victim Carson.
I think he's busy trying to use that stick horse of his to get a rocket to go into space. He is a rocket surgeon after all.
I mean, seriously. But yet, when I ask this question, and I always pose the question to people, they don't have an answer. And they instantly do one of two things. They'll either say, I don't want to discuss this anymore and change the topic, or they'll start attacking me, ad hominem attacks.
Don't you love that? And of course, that means each and every time that you've won. And that's what we're facing in this country. We have lost civil discourse. We have gone to the most base, abject horror that we see play out like we have all throughout this 2016 election cycle. But remember, folks, the thing that we need to take away from all of this is why it is so important to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because it empowers us to stand up to these frauds and these charlatans, these hucksters, these con artists and snake oil salesmen and say, no, enough is enough. This country belongs to us. The Constitution belongs to us. It's not for sale. It's not to be handed to the mafioso quafioso to make him feel better about himself because he has smally little hands. No, it's not about any of that. It's not about I would rather be shot in the left eye or the right eye, or I'd rather lose one appendage or the other. No, it's not any of that. What it comes down to is the power and control of this nation and its destiny. It's a fight for the soul and survival of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, and we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are dedicated to allowing the people to be empowered, to keep power in the hands of the people. That is what matters. Not any of this other stuff. All of that other crap is penultimate. That's what we are dedicated to here. That's why we are the new resistance. We will not back down. We will not turn our backs on that. And with that said, It is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back to pour you your last round of alcohol. If she does not allow you to have your last round of alcohol, I want you to go ahead and voice your displeasure and then push her out of the plane. Kind of like how the Republican Party wants to push us out. As always, folks, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. On top of that, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you'll find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, and the Cafe Press account. Now tell me, is there any convention things that could be used there? Oh, like shot glasses with our logo on it that these delegates could use to drown their sorrows?
Well, yes, there is. And not only do we have shot glasses, but we have drinking glasses. And guess what, Randy? Those glasses can actually double as protection for the eye. Should anybody want to take one of your left or right eye out, if they don't have, a firearm or whatever, they decide they want to use a pointy object, great deflectors. It works phenomenal. They're bigly in their deflection capabilities. So by the way, folks, with the Cafe Press account, we mentioned this at the closing of every show. It's not so much to push products on you. It's not so much to do this or that. It's for you to be able to show a little support for yourselves. It's not for us. It's for you. We do all of this for you. The show, the Cafe Press accounts, your invitation to leave comments, concerns, feedback. We welcome all the feedback. Any and all feedback. It doesn't matter. Good, bad, negative. Makes no difference to us because that is what we utilize, and it allows us to better serve you, to help empower you.
Yep. And if you want to make fun of our flight attendant, you can do that too. As
she
always,
loves
folks,
it.
Yeah. As always, folks, thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We will see you next time. Do take care.